Yeah, go ahead and record and just cut it when we upload later. Okay.
Good day, guys. I hope you enjoy listening with the other speakers. So my name is Roald, and I'm gonna talk about, my session is all about building a decoupled site with Drupal and Gatsby. So first, I would like to introduce myself. So yeah, my name is Roald Umandal. So I'm a Drupal developer, and I work in Pancha as customer success engineer. So I also love traveling and do some photography. So I do technical support. So our agenda for today is we'll talk about monolithic CMS, Drupal, traditional headless, Gatsby, and Drupal JSON API on how we could configure it. Then setting up our local development environment and configuring Drupal JSON API, so first, and setting up Gatsby. So we have heard a lot about decoupled CMS earlier. So I'm just gonna give some short description about the section per topic. So yeah, we all know that Drupal is monolithic. So it almost does everything. So it does backend content management, content editing in the UI, personalization, forms, and authentication, and search. Drupal has built-in search. Then it's also have its own database. Then we have here the traditional headless and decoupled. So basically the headless, it's just means that exposing API, right? While the decoupled is just a microservice. So it's composed of different API services that works with each other. So yeah. Then next is I'm going to show you the diagram of full stack CMS architecture and the modular headless CMS architecture. So here on the left side, you'll see the full CMS architecture. So like what I said earlier, so we have here almost everything. So forms, authentication, analytics, search, and then content editing UI, then database. So basically this monolithic architectures does everything. And while the modular headless CMS architecture, it's composed of microservices. So there's a composed of others APIs like Drupal. So we basically just expose the JSON. Then we have here, as you can see, a Shopify and WordPress. Those are content system. Then we have here the content mesh. That's we're going to talk about later. It's we're going to use Gatsby. So there's also other services that we could integrate in headless CMS architecture like OAuth and then analytics and then search Algolia. Then for the payment gateway, we could integrate Stripe or PayPal, something like that. So first, what is Gatsby? Gatsby is we know that it's a free open source framework. So it's made of created on top of React, and it's helped developers to build fast websites. So it's just basically like a template or a static template that we could use for rendering or sourcing APIs from different framework like Drupal. So Gatsby introduced content mesh. So content mesh is not a new word. It's been for a long year, and yeah, it's just like Gatsby reintroduced it again. So basically, it's a infrastructure layer for a decoupled website. Then basically just a content mesh that stitches together content systems. So like other microservices, while in the modern development environment, while optimizing website delivery for performance. So Gatsby handles the front end stuff. So the content mesh empowers developers while preserving content creators or workflows. It gives you access to the best of breed services without the pain of manual integration. So it's like a separation of concern. Like content creators, they don't need to worry about the backend or anything. So developers have free time, or developers could improve the backend, preserving while the contents are preserving, while the creators preserving the content. So okay, so here's the diagram of content mesh. So as you can see, we have here the headless CMS. So you could see the contentful, the Drupal, Salsify. Then on the website performance, we have here the Fastly, CDN, then the S3, AWS, and other vendors like Netlify. Then on the modern tools, we use frameworks like React, AngularJS, or Vue.js. So these are for all developer stuff. Next, so here's I think this is a great example of what's content mesh looks like. So basically, this one is an e-commerce site. So these e-commerce sites are composed of different microservices, right? So we have here Shopify for displaying the products. Then for the sign-in, login, they use OAuth. Then for the payment gateway, they use Stripe. And of course, for the front end, use Gatsby in stitching this all microservices. Then also Gatsby has its own website, e-commerce website. They also use these different microservices like OAuth, Shopify, and also the GitHub. So that's this OAuth. Then their checkout or payment gateway, they use ShopPay, GPay, and PayPal. So now we're going to talk about Drupal and JSON API. So here later we are going to discuss how to set up Drupal 8 and how to configure JSON API. So we could expose our nodes, and we're going to create our own content type for the API. Then on local development environment, we're going to use Lando. So just in case someone is not familiar with Lando, Lando is a local development tool that used to it's a composed of containers or in different applications. So this is like it's like a SAMP, but it's more on advanced, and it uses Docker and container. So okay, so system requirements. So I'm using Mac, so the minimum requirements is Mac OS 10.14. Then for Windows 10, Windows 10 Pro Plus or equivalent. And then of course Linux, you could also install Lando in Linux. So one of the prerequisite of Lando is Docker. So you also have to install Docker. So next. Then we're going to proceed on the setting up local dev environment. So the latest version could be downloaded in GitHub. I'm using my Mac, so I use the guide on installing it using the Mac. So first, you just visit the link below. So it will redirect you to the installation page. And for the other OS, so you could go and visit this link. And then we're going to first setting up our Drupal site. So first we create our project, our folder. So for example, we're going to name it DrupalCamp 2020. Then we will run Lando init. So by the way, we could run this in single line. So you don't have to run it one by one. So you could simply just run it on a single line. So we define the source remote. Then the remote URL is from where we're going to download the Drupal project. Then remote options. Then we have here recipe, of course, Drupal 8, and then web root. So we're just going to use the default path, which is in the root folder. Then we're going to name our site DrupalCamp 2020. Okay, after that, it will download the packages. It will create application servers and other stuff like a database and application server. It will usually takes a minute to finish. So if you download it first time, so it will take time to pull the packages. So after that, we just need to run Lando start. So it start the application server and the database server. And then after that, you will get this result. So it will provide you the app server URLs. So you could use localhost, then port, and then you could use the alias DrupalCamp 2020, then .lando site. So you just need to visit that URL, and it will redirect you to the installation page. So it's just this one is just a bare Drupal site. So you have to choose a language and proceed to the profile verification requirements, set up database, and install site. So here you need to set up your database. So for you to be able to get the login information of the site, you could just simply run Lando info, and it will show results about information about the application server. So it will provide you the credentials on the database, Drupal 8. So basically it's just a default, all default. So Drupal 8, Drupal 8, Drupal 8. Then your host, the host that you're going to use is within the internal underscore connection. So that would be database, and the port would be 3306. So okay, then let's just proceed on the installation part. After that, voila, we have Drupal site installed in Lando. So okay, I just Lando for me to easily configure the site instead of setting up in my machine, so I could easily just destroy it later. Then what modules are we need? So the only modules that we need to download is the JSON API extras, but JSON API and serialization is already part of the core. So what we just need is the JSON API extras. So how would we install a JSON API? So we use Composer to run to download the module. So we just run lando composer require, then Drupal and the module name and its version. So after that, hit enter and it will download the module and its dependencies. So it will take time to download, like a few minutes, like 3 minutes or more. So it also depends on your internet connection. So I just took screenshot. So what we are going to do is we're going to create a gallery. So if anyone of you are familiar with the Mobile Legends, so we're going to create an API that we could use to feed Gatsby. So let's start. So what we need, okay, we're going to create a JSON API. Then first we have to create a content type hero. Then we will gonna add image field, then class. Then we're going to expose the node to JSON. So first, let's create a content type hero. So here we go to the structure and then content type. Then we just type the name of our content type. So we will call it hero. Then we will add field. So we'll just reuse the field image. So on the right section, just select field image, then save and continue. So okay, we're going also first create a taxonomy that we're going to use in the class. So we'll create a vocabulary class. Then here we will add a new field like assassin, fighter, mage, marksman, support, tank. Those are the class of our hero. Then after that, we go again to our content types hero. Then we'll select taxonomy term. Then we'll select class. So just tick the class on the vocabulary. Then save after that, and you just go to JSON API extras. So here you could configure your path prefix. By default, it sets to JSON API. So if you want to shorten it like API, this is the place you could edit it. So yeah, no, there's no cleric class at this moment. Okay, just a support. So after that, you could also overwrite it later on if you decide to update it. So here, you notice the resource path is set to hero. Okay, and after that, you'll see this interface where you could just check or disable what fields that you want to display later on exposing the API. So here I just expose the hero name, which is the title. The body is the description, so I rename it. Just set alias. then field class, and then image. So basically, we just are going to display 4 items or 4 fields. And here, we are going to create a hero node. So for example, Ling. So it's a assassin type. So I just pulled the description on official website of Mobile Legends. Then I just manually add it on Drupal backend. And then after that, you could just navigate on the endpoint that we created earlier. So it's JSON API/hero, or you could also name it API/hero. Then you'll see these datas are the fields that we are going to expose in Gatsby, like hero name, description, and the image. So we're now going to proceed on setting up Gatsby. So first, we need to install gatsby-source-drupal. That's the plugin that we're going to use to build connection with the Drupal and Gatsby. And then we're going to use theme-ui, Gatsby plugin-theme-ui. So that's basically the theme for Gatsby. That's the default. Then we're going to configure our lando.yml file. So here we define the name of our application, then the URL, the alias. Then we're going to also define the app server and what node that we're going to use. We also need to install Yarn as part of our requirements. Then Gatsby CLI, and then npm node and npm. Then after that, we just going to clone the Gatsby starter default repo. So we need to go inside of our project folder. So basically, we will going to have application server for Drupal API, and we're going to have a front end stuff server for Gatsby. So we're going to clone the Gatsby starter project. Then after that, it will clone the Gatsby starter project, and then we're ready to go to run again the Lando start. So again, it will pull the image. It will create application server, and it will also install Gatsby CLI and other stuff that we required on lando.yml file. Then after that, we're going to install. We're going to run npm install, so it will install npm packages. So here's the command. So we need the Gatsby source Drupal, like I mentioned earlier, and then the Gatsby plugin-theme-ui. Then after that, we're going to configure the Gatsby config.json file. So we will define here the base URL and then the API base. So what we said earlier is a JSON API, but this is optional. So you could also rename it to just API. Then we're going to also add the Gatsby plugin-theme-ui. So we're also going to add it on the Gatsby config file. Then after that, we'll just run lando Gatsby Develop. So I encountered before that I run an issue. So for example, you run npm install without lando, it will use the npm version or node version of your local machine. So sometimes when you run that, it causes conflict on the virtual environment inside the Lando. So I suggest run the npm command inside the Lando. So just prefix Lando, then the command. Then after that, here you could visit the GraphQL. So by the way, it's once you run the build or the Gatsby Develop, you could access the GraphQL. So it's by default installed on Gatsby. It's a part of Gatsby. So here, as you can see, we could access the endpoint or the resource. So we have here all node hero. If you don't set this endpoint using the plugin, this field will not show up. So just make sure that we set this line on the Gatsby config file. So here we could query the content. So for example, here I query the names of the hero. So hero, what we need here is what we need to set here is the hero name, and then the description, and then the image. So you just need to click this checkbox and run the play button, and it will generate the JSON format or of the resource. So you could also use different tool like Postman or other available tools to query the data. But I will prefer the GraphQL. So we will also use this later. Then we're going to create a hero page. So this is the display. We're going to display the picture and the name of the hero and then its class. So first, we need to get familiar with the folder structure. So I'm just going to discuss what is things that we're just we need to touch. So here we have the public folder that contains all the generated static files. So basically, when you run Gatsby build, so that's where the static files generated. Then the src, so basically just it contains templates, pages. So that's where we place our template files. Then Gatsby browser.js, then Gatsby config.js file, and then Gatsby node.js. So that's only files that we usually will touch. We're going to modify. So we're going to update or configure the index.js. So here, we're going to import the theme-ui and other components. So we have here, we need, of course, GraphQL link, image, card, text, container, heading, layout. So these are components that we could use that is built in with the theme-ui. And then after that, we'll just define the layout. So we're going to use the components layout, container, heading, and card. So you'll see the tags here. So here we define the heading, the card, and the other components. Then we just get the value. So on the line 18, it's like it's a mapping. So we're going to query the resource. So basically, it's like just a for loop in PHP. Then we're going to get the value. So later we'll see the GraphQL query. So it's going to be a useful one. So here's the query. So it's just it expose the ID, hero name, then the relationship, that's the taxonomy. Then we expose the ID, the name, and then the image, local file URL, So that's where the image is located. Then the description. Then after that, we're going to display the full page. So it is similar to what we did earlier, but it's going to be a bit different. So again, we import the theme UI components. Then we create a layout for the full page. So we create a mapping here for the class name, and then we display the description. So dangerously set inner HTML. So it's just basically that it will format the text as is when you add it on the back end in the Drupal. So it's just convert the description format. So again, we also do some query using GraphQL here. So we have here a hero name, description, then again relationship, and then the image, local file. Then we select the child image sharp. So this query, you could get this when you access it on your browser __ GraphQL. So you just basically just copy and paste it here and reuse. So now we have here, we have our Mobile Legend gallery. So it will display the list of heroes. And then we have here the full page. So yeah, that's it. I also add some resources here. So if you want to play around with the Gatsby, and yeah, there's a lot of things that you could do, play around in the Gatsby and use different plugins to play around. And it's pretty fast, but sometimes the build is it would take time. So yeah, and then if you're going to host your Gatsby site, you could host it on Gatsby Cloud or Netstify. So those are known. You could host your Gatsby application. And I think that's all for me. Guys, do you have any questions?
Oops, it's already over.
Yeah, I could also show how it works on my local. So let me share that screen. Just a moment. Let's post here. Oops. Okay, and then full screen. Can you see, guys, my whole screen? The Drupal backend, can you see it on your side?
Yes.
Cool. So here, I will add. You want, for example, we update it. So then save. Then we're going to visit our Gatsby site. What's that? So as you can see, it's not changing yet. So we need to rebuild it. run develop, lando Gatsby develop. Can you see my my terminal, my console?
No.
Nope.
Oh, sorry. How can I share my entire screen? Can you see my entire screen now?
You can see your terminal now.
Yeah, so here I run lando Gatsby develop. So what will happen here, it's going to retrieve the data. So it will going to do a build again. So it will pull the data on Drupal. So as you can see, there's a process that calls fetch data from Drupal. Then if we refresh this page, so it should update the content. So here it's changed the name. So basically, if there's a new content in Drupal or in backend, you need to run lando develop or lando build. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Roald. I think we have a couple of questions in chat. I'll take time to read. So first from Brian, how is Gatsby different from React, or is it similar?
Gatsby is built in React, so it's like a flavor of React. So basically, in Gatsby, you also have components. So what's on React also in Gatsby.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question from Mark. What is the main difference between Gatsby and Next.js?
I haven't personally used Next.js, but I think that's also a static site generator. So similar to Gatsby, uh, Hugo, and Jekyll. I the first I just only use Gatsby. I haven't have experience yet Next.js, but I've heard that it's also a static site generator.
Great, thank you. Do you have any other questions from the team? Okay, so just in from Steph, what is the advantage of Headless CMS and what are the example applications good for this use case?
I think for the advantage, so first, it's easily to develop. So you don't need to build your application from the scratch. So you could reuse other microservices. Then I think it's more, you're going to be more productive in developing applications using microservices or headless CMS. So basically, you don't need to create or build your own application because there's already existing services that you could use. And what are example applications that good for this use case? I think e-commerce site. So if you were not that security guy, you could use different services. So you don't need to worry about security because there's already existing services that you could use. And honestly, it will depends on what you are trying to build. So if it's just a simple website or e-commerce site, so I think I would choose headless if it's we're only few developers. So yeah. So basically for the productivity, so I would choose headless CMS. So I don't need to worry with the other features of application. So I could just uh, port the microservices.
Hey, thank you, Roald. There's a question here from me. So I just like to ask and point out, what are the advantages of using Gatsby in
I think
terms of performance for sites?
in terms of performance, because Gatsby is a static site generator, so it's just it converts a site or data to HTML. So it's just basically a static file. And yeah, yeah. So since it's just a static file, so you could just load it on a CDN, so it would become much faster. So you don't need to do long polling because it's static. So you could just generate the data and display it on Gatsby. Just clarify, is there a base theme used in the demo? So I just use the default starter. Then I use the theme UI plugin. So that theme UI plugin is it's like a React component. So I don't need to create my own buttons, my own container. So yeah. Is GraphQL required or sorry?
So I think just to clarify from Mark's question, was there a base theme meant or used in Drupal?
No, it's just a default theme Bartik. Is GraphQL required or is- yeah, I think for me, JSON API is would be enough, but for the formatting, I would still uh, recommend using GraphQL. So and it's also built in on Gatsby, so you don't need to install it. It's pre-built in the Gatsby. Have you tried Counter? I haven't tried yet a Vue. I used Vue before, but it's been a long time. So I would love to try Vue, but yeah, and I'll try to create a comparison between Vue and Gatsby. So
Amazing questions. Thank you. Do we have any more questions?
I just
Or any?
going to answer. Will it affect page performance? No, no, it won't affect page performance, because when you run develop or build, it will generate the just a static file. So no other other stuff that will be added, or GraphQL is not going to be part of that build. So it's just a purely static file. For a team, I haven't tried to make a comparison with the Gatsby and grid some, but yeah, I'll try to use grid some and make a review, and we'll let you know what's the difference. So yeah, about the dynamic content. So there's an extra module that you could use. I think it's called Gatsby Preview. So every time the contents get updated, so it will rebuild the Gatsby. So it will update the content. If you're going to host your Gatsby site in Gatsby Cloud, there's a configuration where you could set that for the dynamic content.
So just a question.
Hey, bro.
Since it is static, so whenever a new content, is there a link to, so that, since you mentioned something about that, so that the Gatsby will build whenever a new content is added, for example, on the backend?
Like a pop-up message?
No, I meant that as you mentioned, this is a static generator. So
Yeah.
that means if there is new content, it needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
So that the static site. So for example, if I add content on a Drupal backend, so how do you enable an auto build?
Yep. There's a module that in Drupal 8, it's called Gatsby. So it's a extra plugin that you could use to automate the build. So if there's a new content, it will push back Gatsby and update the static files. So basically, it's just it's like rebuilding the static file in the background process.
Thanks, Roald.
Welcome, bro. Can you use caching on dynamic content? Yeah, I think you could use caching. So basically, when the what I think here is when you update or save the page, it will also flash the cache on the front end.
Okay. Oh, is anyone still trying to send you a message, Noel, for a question? Or if not, there are additional questions. These are all great questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we have a new question now from Mark.
Or the
What are the
other.
other alternatives that play well with Drupal, aside
Mhm.
from React, or aside from Gatsby? Yep.
I think for the other alternatives, you could use Hugo, but I haven't personally use it. Yeah, thank you, Ajit, for additional note.
Okay, nice. We still have time. We still have a couple of minutes for questions. Or if you don't have any question, just put some comments. It would be nice. So while waiting for more questions, I'd just like to say thanks to Roald for this awesome presentation. Even though the Bard and Cleric
Sorry
class
for
are
the
missing.
background
Sorry for
sounds.
the Bard and Cleric class are missing for Takson. But anyway, kidding aside, it was really great. Yeah, it is really well prepared. And this is really something that we wanted to show, especially with our keynote and the theme that we were putting out for DrupalCamp Manila. As you've seen the future of CMS and Drupal, and this is very timely. We have a session also a little bit earlier about building microservices, using additional tools on making Gatsby. So you can really piece this together. Use Drupal, use some tools to make your front-end static sites, and do some microservices. It's really gonna great. It's gonna be great. Okay, so one more question here. Roald, does Gatsby generate all pages, or can we rebuild only updated content?
Yeah, it's only revealed the updated content, so you could also see it on the build. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yep. Yeah. And just to add to that, we were talking about Gatsby Cloud. They mention, or they use the term incremental builds for this, which mean you can configure only sections or parts of your site to be rebuilt. Nice. Another question here. So for example, the dynamic content only changes on a section of the page, and then it changes depending on country of customer. Can Gatsby handle something like that?
For example, I think that's possible. So you need to install a different plugin to handle that, to check the geolocation of the customer.
Yeah, yeah. I want to add something there. We do call this process GUIP, content like sourcing or something. You should be able to look, or if you cannot look for something in Gatsby resources or plugins library, something about geo stuff. So just a quick search, probably I see here your Gatsby source geo. So probably that's
Yeah.
gonna help you out there. Yeah. So depending on a country of the customer, it will change. So some logic on section there.
Is it okay if I add something here?
Yeah, go ahead. Ajit, that's
Yeah,
you, right?
hi.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I got to know from about this camp from Preston's tweet this morning. I'm from India.
Nice.
So yeah, to about this question of dynamic page, if a section of content page is changing. So since Gatsby is built on React, and React, the components are based on state. So if the state of the component changes, it's very possible to make it dynamic.
Thank you. Yep, that's right. Thank you.
I get it.
There's one more question here. So, do you recommend GitHub pages to host Gatsby or Netlify? So, GitHub pages or Netlify to host Gatsby?
I think GitHub pages is created on a Jekyll, right? Or GitHub pages.
Yep, but it can host Gatsby too.
Yeah. I think it depends on what you want. Um, GitHub pages, if it's just static, so you could stay on GitHub pages. Yeah, but if you want to host it as well on Gatsby or Netlify, that's possible. So because it's a static file.
Yeah. If I may add to that, because the question is, I think, similar or about hosting. Um, uh, from if it will depend on your project. If
Yeah.
it's kind of a mission critical kind of application, you'd probably want to rely on a bigger or larger host or something that would provide you more, I guess, resources.
Yeah, resources.
Um, but I'm not really sure about GitHub pages if they have something like a special offer for larger production sites. Maybe they have, because some sites or some repos who have who are very popular, they somehow build their docs out of some generator too and host it in GitHub pages. And probably that requires some extra resource. So probably
Yeah.
GitHub has something to offer for that. I guess if you're running Gatsby though, you'd probably want to go to Gatsby Cloud because, well, they make Gatsby. That's the first thing. But obviously there's a proposition of the added value versus if there are some other things that you could get from something like with Netlify or some other hosting sites or even Heroku for that matter. So how to answer that recommendation is probably depending on the kind of project. If it's a mobile hero or mobile legends page, let's see if you can do that in GitHub. I think that will work, right, Ron? In GitHub.
Yeah. Yeah, but if it's require a lot of resources, I will
Yeah.
recommend
Yeah.
just
Probably they have something to. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thanks for the question, Timothy.
Yep, thanks.
So next question here for the last 5 minutes. Oh no, it's not question. Yeah, Netlify is pretty easy. It's free for basic site. Yeah, that's right. I think Netlify has a better offering in terms of those free tier stuff, I
Yeah.
think, versus the Gatsby. So yeah, I guess if it's a question of where to host best when it's free,
Yeah,
if that's the question. So
both
probably
both
somewhere we go.
yeah, I think both Netlify and Gatsby have a free tier, so we could play
Yeah.
around and compare.
Yeah, and if it's free, then host on everything, and use host on everything, and use something to use all. Just kidding. Okay, so great questions, guys. Keep them coming. We still have 4 minutes, but if we don't have any other questions, I think you can reach Roald. I guess just for me, I'm curious if there's um, a GitHub repo that can be shared if someone wants to play around with this. That will be great. We can share a GitHub repo. We can post that maybe in the slides or in the session page later on. That will be
Yep.
great.
I will push it on my GitHub account and share it to others
Yeah.
folks.
Awesome. And I really like it that you use Lando as well, because that means someone can just reuse the same Lando configuration
Yeah,
view,
they could just run.
jconfig.
Yep.
Yeah, so all you need to do, guys, if you follow strictly the guide, is just really hit the commands that's written in the slides. It's really great, something that you can really start with if you want to play around with using Drupal and also Gatsby at the same time. So you have a server for a Drupal site and a server for setting Gatsby in your local machine. Okay, so thank you very much again, Roald. It is really great. And thank you for all the participants who've joined and who have asked their questions. I'm really sure more questions would come in as you keep on working and trying out Headless CMS, especially with Gatsby. So to close, this is going to be our last session for this room and for the day. But we have an evening social. Supposedly we're gonna have drinks, but we won't be doing that now. We're just gonna do some virtual fun. We are gonna prepare some things to do, some games. There's some folks who are volunteering to do some games. If you have time, feel free to drop by. We're gonna stay there and just chat with folks, just have fun and maybe spend just maybe a couple of minutes to say hi to folks here. Again, thank you everyone for joining, and see you tomorrow. We will have another set of sessions. You will see in the schedule page the lineup. But I hope we have another room, but it's only meant for BOFs. But if there's no one who would be volunteering or interested in running a BOF session, we are just gonna have a single track session here in room A. So see you tomorrow. It has been awesome. I hope to see you again, guys. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you. Bye, folks. I'm gonna give a wave. Bye.
Guys.